Han Sen was digging a pit at the foot of the mountain, planning to bury the giant golden axe there. Although he escaped the manhunt of Son of Heaven by shapeshifting into the Blood Slayer, there was a limit to how long he could shapeshift. As one of the most powerful beast soul types, shapeshifting beast souls could directly impart significant changes to a human body, which could be unbearable for those with weak genes. The stronger the creature one wanted to shapeshift into, the more geno points and bodies were needed. In general, for primitive beast souls, the number of minutes the body could withstand the shapeshifting was equal to the number of primitive geno points gained. In addition, one mutant geno point could support 10 minutes of shapeshifting with primitive beast souls, and in turn, 10 primitive geno points could support 1 minute of shapeshifting with mutant beast souls. Now Han Sen had 8 sacred geno points, which could last him only 8 minutes for shapeshifting as a Blood Slayer. Even counting the ordinary, primitive, and mutant genes he had gained altogether, he could shapeshift for less than 10 minutes. It was enough for escaping, but if he were to fight a gang of people, he could only kill 1 or 2 before his time was up. No one could see a sacred blood beast soul if it wasn't summoned. Yet the golden axe could not be turned invisible. The person he mainly had offended was Son of Heaven, yet the campaign was a joint one, and the axe should have been the mutual gain of all 3 gangs. Hence, Han Sen had pissed off all of them and could only bury the axe in that spot for the time being. If I could sell the giant golden axe, it should easily bring at least 2 million. Han Sen was still excited after burying the axe. A sacred blood gear was not as valuable as a sacred blood beast soul, but still considered almost priceless. If he could sell it, 2 million would be a small amount. As for the sacred blood beast soul, Han Sen had not even thought of selling. This was the bedrock of his survival and success in God's sanctuary, and it would be like killing the goose that lays the golden egg if he were to sell it. Returning to Steel Armor Shelter, he saw Luo Tianyang guarding the gate with others. Everyone who tried to enter the shelter was interrogated. Can you even see what beast souls I have? Han Sen had no fear as he had already buried the golden axe. A young man at the gate stopped him and wanted to do a body search on him, while Luo Tianyang said, "Why waste any time on that scumbag? How is it even possible that he would be $F***K off?" The young man pushed Han Sen away and turned to search other people. Han Sen looked at Luo Tianyang with a sneer and went into the shelter. Everyone in the street was talking about what had happened at Sunset Slope. Listening to people calling him doll, Han Sen thought, "Damn Su Xiaoqiao. Who told you to call me doll?" He was happy to know that Son of Heaven was furious and strode back to his room. In another room, Su Xiaoqiao stood in front of Qin Xian, almost in tears. "Xian, you need to believe me. I've told you everything I know. I really did not know Dollar, but only saw him once in Zephyr Valley and bought some swift mantises from him, which I gave to my brothers as gifts. Just ask around if you don't believe me. They even helped carry the mantises back from the valley. I am not blaming you. I just want you to contact Dollar, tell him I am willing to buy his sacred blood beast soul and gear, and ask him how much he wants," Qin Xian said quietly. "But I really do not know where he is," Su Xiaoqiao said sadly. "Then go find him. Don't let anyone know about this and go look for him secretly. If you manage the task, I'll reward you." Qin Xian showed Su Xiaoqiao out after she gave the order, not waiting for his reply. After he left, Qin Xian frowned to herself. Who could Dollar be? Is he someone in Fist Guy's gang? Or was the whole thing orchestrated by Son of Heaven? If he really is on his own, can I get him on my side? If I can't, it would also be nice to purchase the sacred blood beast soul and gear. Almost at the same time, Fist Guy sent his men to look for Dollar in secret, trying to buy the sacred blood beast soul and gear from him. Although it was a joint action, the only one who suffered a loss was Son of Heaven. If it had not been for his sacred blood wasp arrow, the bloody slayer would have run away, and there would have been nothing for Qin Xian and Fist Guy. Now they could share some flesh of the bloody slayer, so it had gone well for them. However, Son of Heaven lost a mutant beast soul mount and a sacred blood wasp arrow, while being robbed of the sacred blood beast soul and gear. Anyone in his place would have been exasperated. The entire Steel Armor Shelter was looking for Dollar, yet no one connected him to Ass Freak. Son of Heaven also put a price on his head, and even offered to pay a reward for any substantive information. The price was so good that even Han Sen wanted to offer himself for the reward. Primitive green-scaled beast flesh eaten. 1 primitive geno point gained. Han Sen squatted in the bushes, watching a deep pond near him while chewing meat jerky made from the green-scaled beast. Up until this point, he had gained 91 ordinary geno points, 26 primitive geno points, 0 mutant geno points, and 8 sacred geno points. The copper-toothed beast was still slowly evolving, so Han Sen could only go out to hunt some primitive creatures, hoping to gain more primitive geno points. Because the black beetle armor would draw too much attention, he could only go deep into the mountains where nobody goes, fearing that Son of Heaven would know where he was. Fortunately, God's sanctuary was so vast that there were many places where humans had never set foot, so it was rather easy for Han Sen to disappear. While staring at the deep pond, Han Sen suddenly heard a distant voice of a man and immediately tensed up. Soon, Han Sen saw a young man walking towards the pond in ragged clothes. He was covered with cuts and bruises all over and looked extremely tired. "Friend, there are iron-toothed crocodiles in the pool." Han Sen came out of the bushes and cried from afar. He meant well in warning the young man, but was also afraid that he might alert the crocodiles that he wanted to hunt. This young man looked very tired and seriously injured. If he drank from the pond without knowing the crocodiles were there, he could have gotten killed by the iron-toothed crocodiles hiding under the water. The young man saw Han Sen and became ecstatic. "What is this place? And how do I get to Glory Shelter?" he asked, staring at Han Sen. "Glory Shelter?" Han Sen hesitated, looking at the young man strangely. "We are in Teaks Mountains north of Steel Armor Shelter, and I do not know where the Glory Shelter you mentioned is. I have come so far that I'm now in the territory of another shelter?" The young man whispered to himself, looked up at Han Sen, and said with an almost commanding tone, "Take me to the shelter." Han Sen frowned, as the tone of the young man wasn't very polite. Quietly he said, "You go south from here. If you don't walk too slowly, you can reach the shelter before dark. I have to hunt, so I can't accompany you." Han Sen was preparing to go back into the grass, not expecting the young man to suddenly hit him in the back. Losing balance and falling to the ground, Han Sen knocked his head on a rock and started to bleed. "What are you doing?" Han Sen covered his wound and stood up, glaring at the young man. "All I want is obedience, not bulls *#T. Take me to the shelter." The young man looked at Han Sen coldly. *#KU. Han Sen summoned his bronze crescent spear and poked it at him. Rubbish basic spear skills taught in integrated compulsory education. Even though my beast souls were all ruined on the way here, scum like you can't compare to me. The young man looked at Han Sen contemptuously, raised one palm and slashed it at Han Sen's spear. The young man's hands looked nothing like hands of a man, but rather like they were sculpted out of a whole piece of white jade, giving off an incredible sheen. Crack! The beast's soul spear was cut in half by his palm as easily as a steel knife cutting through wood. Hyper-Geno art. With only half of the spear in his hand, Han Sen was horrified. Science and technology were of no use in God's sanctuary, but ancient martial arts played an unexpectedly important role. With all the Geno points gained, humans were able to perform some mythical ancient martial arts in the real world. Nonetheless, it wasn't the so-called chi but the power of genes that powered the ancient martial arts. So, the more Geno points gained, the more effective ancient martial arts would be. The research showed that ancient martial arts could stimulate and bring out the potential of genes, offering extraordinary power to mankind. A new type of martial arts was developed called Hyper-Geno arts. Hyper-Geno arts were deeply rooted in ancient martial arts, full of mysteries that couldn't be explained by science. Their practice methods were mostly monopolized by the upper class. The most advanced Hyper-Geno arts were the least accessible. For those who graduated from a public school of integrated compulsory education like Han Sen, Hyper-Geno arts were never an option. Only the advanced schools would teach basic Hyper-Geno arts. If the process of gaining Geno points was compared to turning mud into steel, then Hyper-Geno arts could decide whether the steel was to be made into knives and guns, or simply left as a piece of metal. Acquiring genes to make the body evolve was merely acquiring the material, while hyper-geno arts taught one to use the material effectively. You know a lot for the scum you are. The young man looked at Han Sen indifferently. This is your last chance. Lead the way or die. Again, he raised the jade-like palm, as if he was an executioner about to perform his duty. If Han Sen didn't comply, he would cut his head off. Kiss my ass. Han Sen summoned the black beetle armor and covered himself, kicking the young man with a leg sweep. You asked for it. The young man's face darkened, his jade-like palm chopping towards Han Sen's leg. Clank. Han Sen's leg was knocked away, and there was a white mark on the golden armor. The young man was also forced to step back from Han Sen's kick. Surprised, he looked greedily at Han Sen's armor. It didn't break under my jade skin. Must be sacred blood beast soul armor then. A scum like you having such a nice thing is just a gift sent from heaven. Hand over your armor, and I'll spare your life. Han Sen turned around and launched another kick in rage. The young man grabbed Han Sen's leg and twisted it, wrestled him down and came down hard on his back with a knee. Ah! Han Sen uttered a scream, feeling his spine about to break. Scum is always scum, even with a sacred blood beast soul. The young man, named Xuelongyan, continuously hit Han Sen on the back of head, knocking his head into a rock. He cried ferociously, "Surrender the sacred blood beast soul. It's not meant for scum like you." Asshole. Han Sen's blood was burning. He suddenly raised his head and butted Xuelongyan's face with his helmet. Blood splashed from Xuelongyan's nose. He covered his nose and backed off. Han Sen regained freedom and immediately summoned the Bloody Slayer. The moment he turned into the monstrous figure, he threw himself at Xuelongyan. Xuelongyan kept chopping at Han Sen, while Han Sen ignored all the attacks from his tough hands and held him down tightly, the cow-shaped head knocking on his head. Who is scum? Who the F*** #K is scum? Han Sen knocked madly on Xuelongyan's head over and over again. While Xuelongyan was struggling to kick Han Sen, the latter ignored him and rammed his face with the cow head. It didn't take long before Xuelongyan's body went limp. When Han Sen finally calmed down, he was already dead, with his face smashed in like a hunk of meat. With the body of a bloody slayer and sacred blood beast soul armor, even those who practiced hyper-geno arts couldn't resist such brutal impact. Han Sen let go of the body, and Xuelongyan fell to the floor like a pool of mud. Having dismissed the beast souls, Han Sen felt a severe pain. It was hurting so much in a few spots that it felt like his bones were broken. Han Sen dreaded to think what could have happened. He was injured so badly, even with the shape-shifting and armor. Xuelongyan's hyper-geno art was really quite something. If he had the same beast souls, Han Sen wouldn't be a match for him. Looking at the dead body, Han Sen hesitated and then searched the body. There was a wallet, with no cash but several crystal credit cards in it, deluxe ones with high credit lines. He also found a memory chip. After some thought, Han Sen destroyed the wallet and credit cards and threw them, along with the dead body, into the deep pond, while keeping the memory chip. Several iron-toothed crocodiles emerged from the water and snapped at the dead body. Soon even the bones were gone. Han Sen was relieved and turned away. Too injured to keep hunting, Han Sen returned to Steel Armor Shelter, enduring the pain. The gang of Son of Heaven were still looking for Dollar, and the bounty had been raised. Unfortunately, no one had any interaction with Han Sen, so no one would know Dollar was actually Ass Freak. People were still talking about Dollar on the streets. Han Sen went all the way back to his room and checked out the copper-toothed beast, which had turned bronze in most parts, although the shade was still lighter than a true mutant copper-toothed beast. It probably would take more time for the evolution to complete. Teleporting out of God's sanctuary, Han Sen went to see a doctor. Multiple fractures of the bone were diagnosed, and it took the doctor a long time to fix all of them. Fortunately, Han Sen still had the 10,000 he earned from Su Xiaoqiao, or else he wouldn't even have been able to afford the medical bills. Back home from the hospital, Han Sen closed the door and inserted the memory chip into a smart gadget, trying to find out Xuelongyan's identity. Able to cross the mountains and swamps to reach Steel Armor Shelter, and having practiced a hyper-geno art that looked very advanced, Xuelongyan would be very a formidable opponent if he still had his beast souls with him and had not been injured. The smart gadget displayed the contents of the memory chip, and Han Sen only had to look for a while before he became wild with joy. Hyper-Geno Arts? It's a tutorial for Hyper-Geno Arts. Han Sen almost laughed out loud. The hologram stored in the chip was a naked woman making odd movements while reciting arcane incantations. With each movement, she would also give some explanation. Although the woman was extremely beautiful, Han Sen was completely attracted to what she was talking about and had no other thoughts. Jade skin. Isn't this the Hypo-Geno art used by Xuelongyan? Han Sen had seen the power of jade skin when Xuelongyan used it and became even more happy. Having locked himself in the room for 48 hours, Han Sen finally memorized everything in the chip and destroyed it, as it could become a pitfall in the future. After watching the jade skin tutorial, Han Sen had a stronger sense that Xuelongyan must have been somebody significant. Han Sen began to practice jade skin as he was recovering. He had thought before about buying a tutorial of a Hyper-Geno art after he had earned some money. However, the ones that could be bought were all cheap, unlike jade skin, which he could tell was premium. Knowing that practicing jade skin might eventually expose him, Han Sen still decided to begin. If he missed jade skin, he might never have the opportunity to practice a premium Hyper-Geno art. Having practiced for several days, Han Sen felt his body had become cooler, and his body temperature was indeed 35 degrees Fahrenheit lower than normal. It was not a discomfort, but rather a refreshing feeling. Han Sen felt more fit, as if his body cells were full of energy. His body temperature didn't change further as he kept on practicing. Han Sen became more and more fit, and his skin more and more smooth. Han Sen, what have you been up to lately? It's been a while since we met. Let's hang out sometime. The hologram of a smiling, handsome, long-haired man about Han Sen's age popped out from the comlink. Where are we going? Han Sen was delighted to see Zhang Danfeng, the long-haired guy. They grew up together, and he was son of Mr. Zhang, the lawyer. Come out first. Han Hao and Xuexi are also with me, and we are almost there, Zhang Danfeng said. Sure. Han Sen nodded and went out the door. There was a small private jet parked outside, and Zhang Danfeng was waving to him from the driver's seat. Han Sen got in and saw a girl and a guy talking in the back seats. The girl named Xuexi was very pretty and gentle, and the guy was Han Hao, son of Han Sen's fat aunt. Han Sen's aunt was an aggressive woman, so Han Hao inherited her family name. The four young people had all grown up together. However, after Han Sen's father's accident, he could only go to integrated compulsory education, while the rest were in private schools. Han Sen nodded to Han Hao and Xuexi and sat in the co-pilot seat. Han Hao took a look at him and continued to talk to Xuexi, ignoring Han Sen. Xuexi, you should see it. Dollar just waved his hand and turned into a monster with horse legs, a human upper body, and a cow head in golden armor. Son of Heaven and his gang could do nothing but watch him gallop away. Han Sen was somewhat surprised to see Han Hao sputtering on. He did not know Han Hao was also randomly sent to the steel armor shelter. Han Hao was 3 months younger than him, so he should have just had his birthday and gained access to God's sanctuary. For unknown reasons, if those under 16 were teleported, their bodies would suffer irreversible damage. So according to the Alliance laws, one must be 16 years old to be teleported to God's sanctuary, regardless of social status. Hey Frenzy, where are we going?
Han Sen asked Zhang Danfeng.
Although Zhang Danfeng was a good-looking man, he became crazy whenever he was in a fight, hence the nickname. Zhang Danfeng's face lit up. Starlight Martial Hall. My idol Tang Zhenliu is going to be in an exhibition fight held there. He was the chosen last year, and his broadsword skills are so fierce. Zhang Danfeng was full of yearning. In this era where everyone was focused on evolution, stars no longer came from acting, singing, sports, and esports, but from fighting. In God's sanctuary, once every year the martial hall of each shelter would open at the same time, and those in the top 100 could have their names on the martial stele in the martial hall. The champions from each shelter would be eligible to compete among themselves. And the same happened in all 4 phases of God's sanctuary. The top 10 from each phase could have their names on the sacred stele, which was public to everyone in the same phase, and gain the title The Chosen. And the 10 chosen would become the hottest stars of the year. In recent years, Qin Xian had always been the champion of steel armor shelter, but her name was never on the sacred stele, so she was never among the top 10 of First God's Sanctuary. Ranking number 5 last year, Tang Jinliu was known for his fierce broadsword skills. He was very popular among young people and even more well-liked than the top 4. He was paid as high as 10 million levo dollars for any exhibition match. Knowing his popularity, Han Sen was nevertheless shocked when he saw a full house at Starlight Martial Hall, which could accommodate more than 100,000 people. Many crazy fans were holding signs and calling out Tang Jinliu's name. When he appeared, a girl was so excited that she fainted. If I could have my name on the sacred steel like Tang Jinliu once in my life, then I'd know I've lived. Zhang Danfeng said admiringly. You will frenzy. Han Sen smiled and said, watching the young people around him going crazy for Tang Jinliu's appearance. It's so hard. I have entered God's sanctuary for 3 months already. Although I bought some primitive flesh and a primitive beast soul, it's still difficult for me to hunt any mutant creatures. If I could buy a mutant beast soul, it would be much easier. But even if I had the money, people wouldn't necessarily sell their mutant beast souls. Zhang Danfeng shook his head with a wry smile. Han Sen thought to himself regretfully, the only thing that could be brought from God's sanctuary to the real world was a beast soul, while it can only be used but not traded there. Otherwise, I could produce mutant creatures and would gain some mutant beast souls eventually, which could be really helpful to Frenzy. Haha, then I have better luck than you, Danfeng. I just entered God's sanctuary and have already gained a mutant beast soul. Such a pity you are not in Steel Armor Shelter, or else we could hunt together and I could help you, Han Hao said proudly. You've gained a mutant beast soul already? Tell the truth, did you hunt it or pay for it?
Zhang Danfeng cried, staring at Han Hao.
Of course I hunted it myself, Han Hao said loudly. Han Sen laughed to himself. Since he was a kid, Han Hao had always raised his voice when he lied. His parents probably bought him the mutant beast soul with an enormous amount of money. The cheapest mutant beast soul would cost millions, and good ones tens of millions. So that's why his relatives were after the old house. It was a huge expense for them. Although the company had earned a lot of money, they had probably spent it all by now. Tang Jinliu was indeed awesome. Although it was just an exhibition fight, his broadsword skills were so swift and fierce that his broadsword almost became invisible. After watching for a while, Han Sen knew that Tang Jinliu must have practiced premium hyper-geno arts and learned his weapon skills from masters, and he was no competition to Tang Jinliu. Tang Jinliu won the fight and summoned a beast soul to perform, shape-shifting into a 3-meter-tall Tyrannosaurus creature and smashing a huge stone with its head, arousing a burst of screaming. Sacred blood beast soul of raging Dementor. I would do anything for a beast soul like this. Zhang Danfeng stared at Tang Jinliu, who turned into a monster with a watering mouth. This is nothing. This beast soul is nothing like the $1 has. Han Hao sputtered about dollar as if it were himself. It would take a showdown to tell. Tang Jinliu was Danfeng's idol, so he was upset to hear that. I don't know how good dollar was, but his sacred blood beast soul was robbed from others, and it was not a chivalric act. Even if he had a great beast soul, he would not be comparable to Jinliu. Han Sen blushed with shame and thought, oh Frenzy, you didn't know what a hard time I was having. How could I let go of an opportunity like that? Not to mention Son of Heaven was my enemy. Han Sen was hesitating whether or not to tell them that dollar was himself, but decided not to. It wouldn't do them any good, after all. Han Sen kept practicing Jade Skin and recovering after he returned home. Every 2 days he went to God's sanctuary to check on the copper-toothed beast. It took the beast half a month from the time it swallowed the black crystal to become a mutant creature, but it was still the size of an ordinary copper-toothed beast, while the mutant copper-toothed beasts Han Sen had seen were twice that size. In addition to the size, the one he evolved into wasn't much stronger either, not even close to a true mutant one. Han Sen took out his alloy dagger and slashed the beast on the neck, but caused no damage at all. It was his dagger that chipped, so it is somewhat different from an ordinary one. Han Sen shape-shifted into a bloody slayer and snapped its neck by force. Mutant copper-toothed beast killed.
No beast soul gun.
Eat its flesh to gain 0 to 10 mutant geno points. The sound in his mind overjoyed Han Senator. It might look different than a wild mutant copper-toothed beast, but it was fine as long as it was indeed a mutant creature. Now what was troubling him was how to sell this mutant copper-toothed beast. He really needed the money, or else he could just eat it to gain mutant geno points. It is too dangerous for me to sell it showing up as dollar, now that the entire shelter is looking for him. But it would also be troublesome if I were to sell it using my own true identity. Han Sen still decided to use Dollar's name after some hesitation. Su Xiaoqiao was depressed these days. Qin Xian asked him to find Dollar, but he didn't know Dollar any more than she did. So what was he supposed to do? Early in the morning, Su Xiaoqiao was tripped by something and fell flat on his face. Who is this #cur that placed a stone in front of my room? He's dead if I find out. Even more depressed than before, Xiaoqiao saw that there was something under the stone. He took a closer look and found a note and a bundle. The note said, "Goods worth 50,000 delivered. We are square. If you want more, come to Zephyr Valley tomorrow. Cash only." Although there was no signature, a coin was drawn at the lower left corner, making clear who it was from. Dollar. Su Xiaoqiao was thrilled but didn't make a sound this time. Looking around and seeing no one, he took the bundle and note and closed the door. Su Xiaoqiao carefully opened the bundle and saw a long strip of meat jerky the size of 2 or 3 bites. Su Xiaoqiao chewed up the meat jerky and swallowed. Mutant copper-toothed beast flesh eaten. 1 mutant geno point gained. The voice in his mind surprised Xiaoqiao. Mutant copper-toothed beast flesh. So it was hunted by Dollar? He must have more now that he asked me to bring cash to Zephyr Valley. Thinking of this, he got even more excited that he could bring Qin Xian's message to Dollar and buy mutant flesh from him at the same time. Early in the morning, Su Xiaoqiao set off to Zephyr Valley. He waited from early morning to noon but didn't see Dollar coming. #T. He must have fooled me. Su Xiaoqiao was so upset that he was preparing to leave, but then heard someone say, "You brought cash?" Shocked, Su Xiaoqiao turned around and saw Dollar in golden armor emerging from below the ground. "Brother, did you hide there all morning?" Su Xiaoqiao said, staring at Han Sen. "I've been hiding here since last night. You know what's going on right now, and I have to be careful," Han Sen said casually. "I admire you, Dollar, but you really have nothing to worry about. I'm so grateful you would sell me mutant flesh and would never betray you." Su Xiaoqiao gave Han Sen the thumbs up. It was incredible that he could stay underground for the whole night and the entire morning. It must have been so uncomfortable. Cut the crap. Did you bring the money? Han Sen pulled out another bundle from the pit where he was hiding and placed it in front of Xiaoqiao. Su Xiaoqiao looked inside the bundle, which was full of the same meat jerky he had eaten yesterday. There must have been more than 5 pounds of it. He excitedly asked, "Dollar, did you make all this from the mutant copper-toothed beast?" "Yep. An entire mutant copper-toothed beast is right here. 2 million, and no bargaining," Han Sen said. "Well, 2 million is fine." Su Xiaoqiao handed 2 stacks of 10,000 notes to Han Sen, but doubted whether the entire beast was really there, as there should have been more meat. Han Sen noticed his doubt, took the money and said, "This meat jerky is made in traditional ways, so it shrank a bit. Rest assured that the whole beast is here." Han Sen made the copper-toothed beast into meat jerky, so that no one would wonder why the beast was so tiny. "Of course I trust you." Su Xiaoqiao paused and said, "Dollar, you should know that I work for Qin Xian. She has a message for you. She wants to buy the sacred blood beast soul and golden axe you gained the other day, and she could offer you a good price." "Oh, what is the price?" Han Sen was interested in selling the golden axe, as it was not that portable. He hadn't found a chance to use it, so it was still buried. "You will have to figure this out yourselves. I'm just the messenger," Su Xiaoqiao shrugged and said. "If you meet with Qin Xian, tell her if she really wants to buy it. She can name a price and you can bring it to me," Han Sen said lightly. It was too risky for her to meet Qin Xian. Han Sen took back the beast's soul armor and returned to Steel Armor Shelter. When he was entering the gate, he met an acquaintance.
Sen.
Han Hao was surprised to see him. "Han Hao, you know us freak?" Han Hao's companions all recognized Han Sen and looked at Han Hao strangely. "No, wrong guy. Let's go." Han Hao paused and looked embarrassed. Without saying hello, he walked past Han Sen. Han Hao hadn't expected Han Sen to be in the same shelter, nor that he was also the infamous ass freak. If word got out that he was Han Sen's cousin, Han Hao couldn't imagine what Son of Heaven and Qin Xian would do to him. Han Sen smiled wryly and did not expose Han Hao's lie. Since Han Hao didn't want anything to do with him, why would he do his cousin any harm? With 2 million on him, Han Sen left God's sanctuary and went back home. He asked Mr. Zhang to help with the legal procedures regarding the old house to avoid any further disputes with his relatives. After that, Han Sen felt a lot more relaxed. Everything would be taken care of, and life would only get better. When he earned more money, Han Yin could go to a private school, where she could get a much better education than he did. In some elite schools, she could even learn hyper-geno arts and have a much better start. To enter an elite school, however, her family must be aristocratic. So Han Sen must complete one evolution and gain the title. That would be a piece of cake for me. I could even have the title of Sacred Blood Aristocrat if I want. Han Sen's spirits were high. Brother, you here? Han Yin, in floral pajamas and holding a doll in her arms, poked her head through the door and searched for Han Sen. Seeing Han Sen sitting on the bed, she ran over and leaned against him with the doll. Naughty girl, why are you still up? Han Sen pinched her little nose. Yin wants to listen to a story. It's been forever since you told me stories, and I've missed you so much since you've been gone. Han Yin looked at Han Sen with watery eyes.
Han sin sekretlu.
Since he graduated and entered God's sanctuary, he had almost no time for his little sister, which he felt so guilty about. I'll tell Yin a story right now. Han Sen sat Han Yin on his lap, opened a storybook and read softly, Once upon a time. After Han Sen returned to God's sanctuary, he decided to catch a primitive creature to feed, which, incredibly, would turn to a mutant one in half a month. But Han Sen was more curious to know how long it would take for it to become a sacred blood creature, which is what he needed most. It was still relatively easy to hunt a wild mutant creature, but almost impossible to hunt a sacred blood one. Take the Bloody Slayer, for example. He could never have killed it if it weren't already severely injured by Son of Heaven. The moment Han Sen left his room, he was pulled away by someone. Han Sen turned and saw Han Hao, who pulled him to a remote spot. After confirming there was no one nearby, Han Hao said, How did you cause such trouble? You haven't even been here long, and you've managed to piss off gangs of both Qin Xian and Son of Heaven. I didn't mean to, Han Sen said casually. I do not care. You are on your own for the stupid things you did. You are not allowed to say that I am your cousin, or that you know me in front of others. I just started here and have a bright future, and will not be destroyed like you were, Han Hao said, glaring at Han Sen. Sure, I won't tell. Han Sen knew his cousin had been looking down on him since he went to integrated compulsory education, and there was no way he would support him under these circumstances. Of course, he was not obligated to either. That's settled then. Don't say you know me, Han Hao told Han Sen once again before leaving, fearing that someone might see them together. Han Sen left Steel Armor Shelter and went all the way into the mountains. He didn't plan to hunt copper-toothed beasts anymore, as he had had enough of their meat and would no longer gain primitive geno points from it. It was another primitive creature that he was going after. He could eat several and also bring back a living one to evolve. Han Sen had chosen a place called Barathram Cave for hunting this time. It was a remote cave in the mountains, where primitive creatures, quartz scorpions, lived. Because it was so dark and narrow in Barathram Cave, even with lighting equipment, sometimes it was still difficult to see quartz scorpions hidden in rock tunnels. If stung by these scorpions, it would take a mere 3 to 5 minutes before someone who had maxed out on primitive geno points would be poisoned to death. Therefore, few people would choose quartz scorpions as their targets. With black beetle armor, however, Han Sen wasn't risking much, as it was not likely that quartz scorpions could get to him. He chose quartz scorpions because, first, it was easy to hide himself from the public in the cave, and second, a quartz scorpion was only the size of a fist, so it would be easy for him to carry their bodies back, unlike the large prey which were hard to transport. Third, if he happened to gain the beast soul of a quartz scorpion, he would also make a fortune, as it was a weapon like a military knife which was poisoned and incredibly sharp. As a primitive beast soul, its price was almost as high as a mutant one. At the mouth of the cave, Han Sen made sure he was alone and summoned his armor, entering Barathrum Cave prepared. As modern lighting equipment didn't work in God's sanctuary, Han Sen brought a self-made torch, with which he could only see several feet in front of him. With mica and the rocks reflecting the light, he could hardly see the hidden scorpions. Clank! Han Sen soon felt a hit on his foot. He looked down and saw a deep blue scorpion the size of his fist stinging him on the feet with its tail. Fortunately, Han Sen's feet were also wrapped in armor, and the scorpion tail couldn't hurt him at all. Han Sen stepped on the quartz scorpion and crushed it. Primitive creature quartz scorpion killed. No beast soul gain. Eat the flesh of quartz scorpion to gain 0 to 10 primitive geno points. Han Sen picked up the dead scorpion, put it into a prepared bag, and walked further into the cave with the bag on his back. Protected by the black beetle armor, Han Sen killed all quartz scorpions he saw on the way, and there were nearly 100 scorpions in his bag after he had walked for an hour. Georgie Porgy, Pudding and Pie, kissed the girls and made them cry. When the boys came out to play, Georgie Porgy ran away. Han Sen collected the dead scorpions as he was humming a nursery rhyme. His mother had to work to support their family, and he was the one who took care of Han Yin. That's why he was used to humming nursery rhymes. Dolar. Han Sen heard the other name he had given himself when he was on a spree. Shocked, he peered in the direction where the voice came from. In the cave sat a woman in her 20s leaning against stalagmites, looking at him surprised. Qin Xian.
Han Sen exclaimed.
Not expecting to see this woman here, Han Sen turned around to run. Since he had stabbed her in the rear, he had had nightmares about it. Don't go. I don't care about the grudge between you and Son of Heaven. And even if I wanted to look for trouble, I wouldn't be able to, Qin Xian quickly said. Han Sen paused and looked back at Qin Xian, whose ankle was swollen and badly bruised. Clearly, she had been stung by a quartz scorpion. It suddenly hit Han Sen that Qin Xian must have so many treasures on her since she had been in steel armor shelter for years and wished to evolve with the maximum sacred geno points. She must have sacred blood beast souls and very many mutant beast souls. At this point she was injured, and it looked quite serious. She had so many geno points that the scorpion poison might not kill her, but her ability to fight surely had suffered, or at least she couldn't move her injured leg. Although I was the one who stabbed her, she hit me back right away and has been ruthless to me ever since. If I could blackmail her right now, that would be some compensation for my suffering these months, Han Sen thought, leering at Qin Xian, as if she could see through him. Qin Xian summoned a beast soul in the shape of a purple butterfly, which turned into a purple dagger in her hand. You know the name of this dagger? Qin Xian asked him with a smile. I don't. Han Sen noticed the gleam of the dagger, but she couldn't have summoned it for its beauty. It must be at least a mutant beast soul and even possibly a sacred blood beast soul. This dagger is the beast soul of a malicious butterfly, and it is envenomed with strong poison. You decide if your armor could block my dagger. Qin Xian was still smiling. Qin Xian couldn't see Han Sen blushing because his armor blocked his face. You worry too much. We just met and have no hard feelings between us whatsoever. Why would I try to hurt you? The sacred blood armor might not have been able to block the sacred blood dagger. Han Sen would not take the chance. Besides, they weren't really enemies either, as Qin Xian didn't do anything more than make a few threats. It was Son of Heaven and his gang that really bullied him. Qin Xian smiled and took back her dagger. I can't move. If you can take me out of the cave safely, I will pay you a generous reward. How come you came here alone? Han Sen asked, not agreeing straight away. He was curious how Qin Xian was able to come this far when there was no trace of quartz scorpions being hunted on the way. Originally, I wanted to kill a mutant quartz scorpion, but it was more cunning than I thought. It started to attack me, leading other scorpions when my incense was about to burn out, so that I couldn't leave the cave. The primitive scorpions no longer feared me when the incense was gone. I was able to fight them off but was stung by a mutant quartz scorpion. So now it's even less likely that I can leave here. Qin Xian looked at Han Sen and said, Didn't you barter with Su Xiaoqiao for money? Take me out and I'll offer you that. You were stung by a mutant quartz scorpion?
Han Sen looked at her, horrified.
If it was just a sting by a primitive quartz scorpion, I wouldn't have asked for help, Qin Xian said casually. Han Sen now knew it was incense that kept the quartz scorpion's sway from Qin Xian, and she thought that he must have used the same method. What she didn't know was that he had killed all quartz scorpions on the way out. If she had known, she would have walked away herself. Did you not kill the mutant scorpion? Han Sen asked again. Yes, but I did not get a beast soul. No one could get the flesh either, as it's full of scorpions out there, Qin Xian said. I'll take you, not for money but for a mutant beast soul. You are too greedy. Qin Xian glanced at him. Miss Qin, for you, a mutant beast soul is nothing. Is your life not worth it?
Han Sen sighed.
All right then.
Qin Xuan looked at Han Sen earnestly.
Amazing. You have a deal, Mississippi? Han Sen walked farther into the cave. What are you doing? Qin Xian frowned. I'll take you out after picking up the corpse of the mutant quartz scorpion you killed. Han Sen continued to go inside. There are so many scorpions there. Don't you need incense?
Qin Xuan looked at Han Sen, puzzled.
Why do men need incense? Han Sen came back with a giant blue scorpion about a foot long in his hand. Qin Xian sighed after looking him up and down. I was tricked by you. You have already killed all the quartz scorpions out there, haven't you? Smart girl. Han Sen poured the dead scorpions from his bag, which soon piled into a heap. Although Qin Xian had guessed it, she was still surprised to see that Han Sen had killed so many scorpions. Han Sen put the corpse of the mutant scorpion in his bag first before he started to fill it with primitive scorpions. There were still a few that wouldn't fit in there, and he didn't waste those but ate all the flesh until he had cleaned them up. Primitive quartz scorpion flesh eaten. For primitive geno points gained. I haven't seen anyone quite like you, willing to eat such disgusting things. Qin Xian had never met someone who had such nice equipment, but remained so stingy. Come on. Han Sen squatted next to Qin Xian, wanting to carry her out on his back. Since there are no scorpions anymore, I could just walk out, Qin Xian said. You have promised me a mutant beast soul and couldn't take that back anyway. Why not enjoy my service with your injured leg?
Han Sen sighed.
You are right. Why not? She bit her bottom lip, got up and carefully climbed onto the back of Han Sen. With the armor, Han Sen couldn't really enjoy the feeling of her body against his. He walked out, carrying Qin Xian, with his bag in one hand. She only weighed about 100 pounds, which was nothing for Han Sen, who had already gained quite a lot geno points. They emerged from the cave in no time. Where are you going? Asked Han Sen. Back to the shelter, Qin Xian said. Han Sen no longer spoke and carried her towards steel armor shelter. After an hour, he let her down. It is not too far away from the shelter now, and people pass by here all the time. Wait for a while, and then ask them to bring you back. Han Sen extended an empty hand to Qin Xian. Now, my mutant beast soul, I have asked Su Xiaoqiao to send a message. Would you sell me the sacred blood beast soul and gear? Qin Xian didn't hesitate before she handed over a mutant beast soul in the shape of a black cat to Han Sen. What is your offer for the golden double-edged axe?
Han Sen asked.
2 million. That is a piece of sacred blood gear, while 2 million won't even get you a mutant beast soul.
Han Sen frov ned.
Sacred blood gear is very nice, but you can't take it to the real world, while beast souls could be used outside God's sanctuary. That explains the price. If you would sell a sacred blood beast soul, I'd give you 20 million, explained Qin Xian. A mutant beast soul, plus 2 million, Han Sen said. A mutant beast soul is out of the question. I'll give you 5 million. Flesh of 2 mutant creatures and 2 million. You are asking too much. Final offer, 6 million. After all, you can't take it outside, Qin Xian said. Okay, get the money ready. I will tell Xiaoqiao when and where we trade, Han Sen said and left with his bag. You really would not consider selling the sacred blood beast soul? 20 million is just a tentative offer. We could discuss further, Qin Xian said to his back. No way. Han Sen left without pausing. Qin Xian looked at him leaving and thought, his armor was tougher than the quartz scorpion sting. It must also be a sacred blood beast soul. Who was he? He doesn't look like a soldier. She had no clue. Han Sen went back to his original look and returned to the shelter with his bag. There was no one guarding the gate anymore. They had searched for dollar for so long and found nothing, so they had to give up. Coincidentally, Han Sen ran into Han Hao and his friends again. Nice to see you again, ass freak. You have a full bag with you. How many mutant creatures did you hunt? A young man ridiculed him. 1.
Han Sen replied calmly.
Haha, you are funny. Could you even hunt primitive creatures? It must be full of black beetles there, laughed the young man, leading everyone to burst into laughter. No one believed Han Sen could get a mutant creature. Han Hao, don't mistake him for anyone. If you knew him, you'd forever have bad luck. A young man patted Han Hao on the shoulder. No way I'd know as freak.
Han har loked embarrassed.
Han Sen ignored them and carried his bag back to his room. He saved the mutant quartz scorpion and was going to sell Xiao Qiao all the rest. Although he could evolve a creature into a mutant one in half a month with the black crystal, he'd rather use the crystal to get sacred blood creatures. In the middle of the night, Han Sen placed a bag of dead quartz scorpions and a note at the door of Su Xiaoqiao's room before knocking a few times. Then he hid in an alley close by and made sure Xiao Qiao took the bag and note inside. It turned out to be a nice collaboration, and Han Sen got the 6 million promised by Qin Xian and another 80,000 for the scorpions. He went back to his room with boxes of cash and almost jumped with joy. Even when his father was still alive, he had never seen so much money at once. Han Sen left God's sanctuary with the money, since the only thing he wanted to do right now was to share the joy with his mother and sister. Their adversity had finally ended. The 2 million he earned before was all used on solving the issue of the old house, and he could eventually have the 6 million to himself, which was a totally different feeling. Although the money was not even enough for the rich to buy a luxury airplane, for Han Sen it was already the most money he had seen in his life. Mom, Yin, I have something to show you. Han Sen pulled them into his room and poured the cash onto his bed. Where did you get so much money? Luo Sulan was first frightened instead of being surprised, fearing that her son might have done something dangerous. Mom, I was lucky to have killed a mutant creature and gained the beast's soul, so I traded it for this money. Han Sen did not dare to tell the truth, afraid that Luo Sulan might get worried. He didn't dare to leak anything about the black crystal, as the precious stone may land its innocent possessor in jail. His whole family could be wiped out if word got out. Luo Sulan said ruefully, Sen, you should not have sold it. It could be of great help to you, and we could always get by.
Mom, no worries.
I will have another chance. I've eaten the mutant flesh and gained mutant geno points. In the future, it'll be much easier for me to hunt, and everything will get better. But Luo Sulan still felt bad, as it was not that easy to kill a mutant creature. For ordinary people, it would be great luck to hunt one, just like winning the lottery, so there may never be a second time. Yin is about to start school, and I'm not letting her to go to a public one like I did, Han Sen said. Luo Sulan looked at her children with tears in her eyes. It's all my fault. I didn't take good care of you. Mom, you are a great woman, and you were the one who raised us. Let me contribute a little as well. Han Sen picked up Han Yin. Yin, let's go out to eat. You can have whatever you want today. Han Yin's face lit up. I want to eat sapphire ice cream. Sure, let's go have sapphire ice cream.
Han Sen pinshed han Jannes small nose.
Sapphire ice cream is too expensive. You don't need to splurge with the money. Save it to buy some meat. Just once. Han Sen went out, holding Luo Sulan's hand. Don't tell others you have hunted a mutant creature, or you sold a mutant beast's soul. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. Luo Sulan urged her son. Since Han Sen's father had the accident, Luo Sulan had changed. She no longer wanted Han Sen to be in charge, but just to be safe. Mom, relax. I will not say a thing. You keep the money and decide what to do with it. Han Sen went out of the house holding his sister with one hand and his mother with the other. Sapphire ice cream was famous throughout the alliance and was also very expensive. Even the cheapest type cost more than 10,000. Their neighbors' kids were always having sapphire ice cream, and Han Sen also had tried it a few times when he was younger. However, when Han Yin was born, they were already bankrupt, so they couldn't afford such luxuries anymore. Having the impression that the ice cream was delicious, Han Sen could no longer remember what it tasted like. When the three came to Sapphire, all the seats were taken, and there was a long line to buy ice cream. Let's go upstairs. Before Han Sen entered the store, He saw through the window that the second floor was almost empty, so he thought the ladies could go upstairs and have a seat while he would stand in line alone. At the stairs, he was stopped by a waiter. "I am sorry, you cannot go up," the waiter said. "Why? Aren't there any seats upstairs?"
Han Sen frov ned.
Contemptuous and impatient, the waiter pointed to a notice on the wall. "You should have heard about our rule even if you have never had our ice cream before." Han Sen looked at the notice, which said, "The distinguished and aristocrats only," and understood what he was referring to. So the second floor was an area exclusively for people with privileges, and ordinary people weren't even allowed to enter. No wonder the second floor had much better decorations yet was so empty. "We don't need to sit down. We'll just wait here, and you go get yin ice cream," said Luo Sulan, trying to spare Han Sen. "I'm going." Han Sen smiled and went to the back of the line. He seemed to be indifferent, but was suddenly possessed by an aspiration. What's so special about the distinguished and aristocrats? Soon I shall have it all and more. The stupid notice will never get in my way again. There still were no empty seats when it was his turn to buy the ice cream, so Han Sen had to order takeout. Before leaving, he took another look at the notice. The distinguished and aristocrats only. The next morning, Han Sen was on the train going to the teleport station, with many passengers sharing his destination. Most people could not afford a teleport device, so they had to enter God's sanctuary using a public teleport station. Today, the conductor seemed to be in a bad mood. While Han Sen was deep in thought about what to do in God's sanctuary, a violent shake of the train left everyone who was standing falling to the sides. Since he wasn't paying attention, Han Sen also involuntarily staggered a few steps forward and fell on something soft. Subconsciously wanting to seize something to regain his balance, he felt strange because what he was holding onto was even more soft and tender. Then he found that he had bumped into a woman in military uniform, and his hands were on her chest. "Bastard!" The woman scowled and elbowed him fast and hard. If she were to succeed, Han Sen would have lost half his face. He subconsciously raised an arm to block the hit, felt a strong hit on his arm, and involuntarily stepped back several steps. The woman turned around and viciously stared at Han Senator. She exclaimed with just one look, "You ass! Qin Xian." She didn't finish her sentence, but Han Sen cried in fear. This woman in uniform happened to be the woman from whom he had gotten the nickname Ass Freak. Han Sen did not expect Qin Xian also to be on Roca Planet, and it seemed that she had enlisted in the army. Being in the military was nothing uncommon in the Alliance, as all legitimate residents of the Alliance needed to serve at least 5 years when they turned 20. When Han Sen turned 20, he would also become a soldier, if there were no special reason for him not to serve. Qin Xian recognized Han Sen, but didn't initiate a fight. She just looked at him with a cold and slightly disgusted look. Han Sen thought ruefully, "She must think I'm a pervert now. I don't even blame her. I did stab her in the bottom, and now, if I were her, I'd assume the same. There are so many planets in the Alliance. How is Qin Xian here as well? And what are the chances that I would meet her and did this to her?" Han Sen thought plaintively. There was no way around it. He would have to let the situation play itself out. In the Alliance, wounding others was not allowed. Qin Xian did not want to make a scene, so she just glowered at him and didn't move further. Han Sen had goosebumps from her staring and immediately got off the train once he reached the teleport station. To his surprise, Qin Xian followed behind him. "Dogs can't help from eating **T. I thought you were just innocent, while you are by nature a disgusting person," Qin Xian said fiercely. "You saw what happened. It was the train, and so many others also fell. It was just a coincidence," Han Sen said with a wry smile. "Would you believe that if you were me?" Qin Xian said coldly. "What do you want?" Qin Xian had identified him as a bastard, so there was no need to explain. "You really are brazen, showing no remorse for what you did. It must not be the first time you have done something like this." Seeing that Han Sen wasn't going to apologize, Qin Xian raged. "You think I'll just send you to the police? It's not that easy. I can't beat you up here, but in God's sanctuary, it will be a different story. You are going there, right? I'll wait for you." Qin Xian immediately left, and the soldiers saluted her. "Good morning, station master." Han Sen stumbled and couldn't believe what he saw. He almost wanted to cry. All teleport stations belonged to the military system. A garrison was assigned to each station, and the station master was the garrison's chief executive. Han Sen had heard that the old station master was to be transferred, and he couldn't believe that Qin Xian would be the new station master, not even in his wildest dreams. Han Sen had a bad feeling about the whole thing. As the station master, Qin Xian would know his whereabouts very well, and it wasn't even possible for him to use a different teleport station. There are 3 public teleport stations on planet Roka, but the other 2 were too far away, and he couldn't waste 2 days on traveling. Han Sen entered God's sanctuary when Qin Xian went to her office. He decided to wait until she left the shelter before he teleported back home. Han Sen gave Qin Xian no chance to intercept him. Taking some meat jerky made from the mutant scorpion, Han Sen left Steel Armor Shelter. Did I use up my luck when I found the black crystal?
Han Sen tog depressed.
He did not go far before seeing Son of Heaven and his gang standing outside the shelter chatting. Han Sen wasn't interested in meeting up with them and went the other way. However, Luo Tianyang called him from behind. "Ass freak, come here." Reluctantly, Han Sen had to turn around toward Luo Tianyang, perplexed. "I'm calling you. Come here and you'll get lucky." Luo Tianyang waved to him, smiling maliciously. "There is no need. I'm not strong. I can only deal with ordinary creatures and can't even fight primitive creatures. I am afraid I cannot help you." Han Sen knew it was never good when Luo Tianyang called him. "Cut the crap. Do you want a beating? I said come." Luo Tianyang gazed at Han Sen with his face dark.